So last time we were talking about starting up Visual Studio and writing our first program. So we looked at a couple things. So our program was basically hash include IOStream, which meant that we wanted to write a program that was able to interact with your computer. So something that can take as input from the keyboard, something that it can display to the monitor. So that is why we had hash include IOStream. Then we wrote using namespace std. We will talk about namespaces later. They're not that important, but for now, just remember that we need to write this. Then we had our int main, uh, round brackets open and close. Uh, every program that you write needs to have this particular int main, right? This essentially says that my program starts from here, so everything within this will get executed. So then we wrote cout hello world, where cout was something that was console out. Then we had two redirection operators, two less than signs. And then within double quotes, we had the string hello world. So that meant that, okay, print out this statement hello world to your monitor. And then we had your return 0. That is also a necessary thing. And remember, int main starts off with a curly bracket and ends with a curly brace as well. Okay. So if we run this particular program using this play button as, that says local Windows debugger, this thing pops up and it prints out hello world. Forget about everything that's after that. This prints out hello world. Okay. So the most essential part of a program is, so a program is useful if it prints something and asks the user for some input and things like that, but your program does not need to do those things, right? So for example, we can say that our program does not require any input or output, right? So in that case, I can just remove this hash include IOStream and using namespace std, because I don't need input output, let's say. But in this particular scenario, if I just have int main, then cout hello world, then return 0, would this work? No. Why won't it work? You can unmute and just speak. I don't care about echoes or anything. So even if I'm outputting, what is the so even if I'm okay, I might go back to the Martin, your something was basically quite noisy, so I muted you in case you just write something, I guess. Okay, so the thing is, because we are outputting something, C++ does not allow you to does not have the native ability to output and input anything from the system. So in that scenario, we need hash include IOStream for input output stuff. So this will not work and this would give you an error. So if I just remove this line as well, and you can see that there is a red squiggly line under cout that says that we don't have the identifier cout is undefined, because there is nothing called cout, because we did not include that package. So if I remove that as well, then int main bracket open close, curly braces open, return 0, semicolon, braces closed. This would be the smallest possible program for C++, right? This particular program does not do anything. It just calls main, which has nothing inside to be done, and it just finishes off. So if I run this, you can see that it does not print anything. It does not do anything. It just says, I am done executing. It's just a useless program, but this would be the smallest possible program in C++. Okay. Last time we also talked about how we can add files to the source files thing. So if you want to write a program, we would create a new project, and then in this project we would add a new item, and then we would add a source file to that particular folder, right? Now, we need to know where this source file exists. So for your assignment submissions, you would need to submit this particular source.cpp file, or in any name, whatever name you give to your file, that's fine, but this CPP file. So in order to find this particular file, what we need to do is we would have to right click on this project tab here, and then go all the way down to open folder in File Explorer. Once you click that, folder would pop up, and this is where your entire project files are. None of these files matter. The only thing that matters is this source.cpp file, the file with the type of C++ source. Okay, so you need to submit this particular file for your Blackboard assignment, on your Blackboard for your assignments, right? Remember, do not submit any of these other files or anything else. Those do not contain any code. The only thing that contains code is the source.cpp file or the C++ source, right? So if I right click on this and I just say edit, you can see that inside Notepad, that is the program that we have just written. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So today we are going to move forward with some other things, some more basics about C++. In general, we are going to talk about two main things. So we have already talked about input and output stuff. So Cin was for input, Cout was for output. We will cover those in a bit more detail later. But in general, today we are going to look at what variables are. How do I create my own variables? What is the use of a variable? What are expressions? So for example, if I want to manipulate or perform some operations on those variables, so let's say that I want to add two numbers together. So those are your expressions. So arithmetic operations or logical operations, we will see other operations. So mainly we will talk about variables and expressions. And also we are going to talk about what is the general way of writing a program. So what are the basic de facto nuances that you should follow when writing a program in order to be able to understand your program later, and more explainability and things like that. But we'll come to. Okay. So the basic, what would your program do? A program is basically there to manipulate some data, perform some operations on that data, compute something, because it's a computer computes something. So you would basically use variables in order to store and retrieve information in that particular. So variables are essentially locations where you can store information and retrieve certain information from it. So variables are essentially the same thing for your algebra courses, right? So if I write in x squared plus y squared equals to 6, then x and y are variables that can have any value, and you perform certain operations on those variables, and then you get some result from it. Okay. So a variable would always have a name and a value. So and a data type as well. So a variable would always have the data type of that variable. We will come to that. A variable always needs to have a name, and a variable will have some value stored inside. So if I say x equals 5, that means that the name of that variable is x. The value of x is 5. Okay. We can type in and create our own variables. So for example, in this particular program, if I say int x equals 5, then that means that our variable name is x, our variable's data type is int or integer, and the current value of that variable is 5, right? So we can name our variables to whatever name that we would like, but there are certain requirements or requirements that you need to follow. So a variable will always start either with a character or with an underscore, and then it can have letters and digits in the name, and that is fine. So for example, let's say so I can type in int x. So Tell me, is this a variable or not? Is X a proper variable name?
Yeah.
Yes, because it starts with a letter. Now, if I say int x8, is that a variable name?
Yeah.
Yes, because as long as it starts with a letter or an alphabet, that is fine. Now, if I type in int underscore 8, is that also a variable name? It is, because it starts with an underscore. Underscore is also a valid starting letter. Now, if I type in int 8 underscore semicolon, is that a proper variable name?
Yes.
No, because
No.
it starts with a number, right? Variables cannot start with a number. It can start with either an alphabet or the underscore. And then it can have numbers and digits and whatever. Okay. Now, second thing is, whenever you name your variables, do not just name your variables as random letters, right? So I can name my variable as something like this, and that is a proper variable name. But I would like my variables to have names that mean something, right? So for example, if I have a variable that uh, stores the sum of two numbers, I would, instead of naming it as int, ASDK, whatever, I should actually be naming my variable as int sum or something more meaningful. So that the next time you actually read your own code, you understand, okay, this variable was used for something down the line and that needs to store a sum or something like that. Variables all can be named whatever, but certain keywords that are already reserved by C++ cannot be used. So for example, I cannot name a variable as int. So int would not be an integer type variable called int, right? So because int is already a reserved keyword, we cannot use it. Okay. Now, let's say that we want our variables to have multiple words, to be represented by multiple words. So for example, let's say that our variable name is sum of all numbers, right? So in that case, there is a convention for that. So there are two possible conventions for that. One is I can write it as int sum of all numbers, where all of the words, the starting letters of all words are capitalized, and then all of the words are bunched together in that sense. This is again a valid variable name, and if you write your variable names like this is called camel casing or camel cased variable names. The other convention for variable names would be sum underscore of underscore all underscore numbers, right? This is just a way of writing your variable names. You can choose either which way that you want. I would want all your assignments and all your programs to have variables that mean what they are trying to do, and no variables such as ASD, whatever. They should mean something. And when you choose a particular convention, so if you choose to write a variable as camel cased variable names, maintain that throughout your code. If you choose to write them as underscores, maintain that throughout your code. Okay. Let's see. The second thing is variable names in C++ are case sensitive. So that means that the variable account, let's say that I have a variable that is called account. So